So the very first part of our presentation tonight, we're going to talk, obviously we want to talk about building relationships in the future, but I think we can't do that until we have an understanding of the historical foundation for relationship building. And I guess what we want to do here is, I want to have a quick Q&A with Fred and Chester about the history of relationship building that you guys have had here in the Boulder Valley. And also, we're going to have Phil talk about some key Niwot history events. So just to create, and there's a little bit of reflection and then Q&A. So let's start with that. And I know that we asked Fred to speak, so I'm going to start with Chester and just reflecting on that history of relationship building and how, what is your take?
We've been up here a few times. we almost live here anymore. When we first started out, we were getting kind of a little static, but today there was still feelings that weren't good between the natives and the non-natives. There was some bad stories out there accusing the natives of starting a war, different things like that, and that wasn't true. And I call them days or them stories Hollywood history, because folks tend to spin a story that benefits them, and they stay away from the truth. And when Fred and I took these positions, we said, we're going after the truth, brother. It's okay. So from that time on, we've been talking with different communities, and what do you need? And they say, well, we need healing, but healing's just not one side. It takes both sides to heal. So we try our best to get that point across to where everybody's happy, not just one side or the other, because if one side is healed, then the other one's still hurt. So you have to do it together, and that's kind of where we're at. We try to bring our nation and the non-native nation to an understanding where we can get along and work together and move forward in this day and age. Today it's getting ridiculous. I'm telling you, it is ridiculous today, and there's no need for that. I mean, it's crazy, but we still have to deal with it. It's not a bad dream. It's for real, and we want to continue to work with all the communities up here in Colorado to build a strong relationship with them, so we can move back up here to our land. So with that, I want to pass it back to brother.
When, as he said, when we first came here, we came as an unknown. You had history books that said who we were in their written history. So when we got here, that's what you expected of us. But as we began to educate, and we knew we had to do this on who we were, our feelings, how we used to be here, how we lived here, what happened to us. We didn't want to come up here and, glare at you and say, you did this to me, and all this. But we wanted to educate you, and we began to do that. We began to tell the stories. We began to tell our side of the history. Even though in some places they did still tell us, well, we're tired of hearing about that. You know, well, then we begin to say, well, then you tell me about your history. Tell me what your family did that was here, right? And so that way we begin to share each other's feelings, each other's history, and we begin to talk to different communities such as that. And we began to tell them that we wanted them to understand us. In this way, when the healing process starts, we can lean on each other to take care of it. And then we can make this place, as beautiful as it is, even more homey.